Hello everyone. My name is Tanvishri. I'm the podcast manager for Oracle Inkme. And this year, again, we bring you the Leaning into the Network series. The theme of June is community. Can't wait to get it started. Hello. So here we have a team of Arnaz Khan, Kejal Sabla, and Arvind Natarajan, Ashok Krishnan, and Akash Upsi. We really value sharing your time and expertise with us. Uh,
Thank you.
Coming to questions, I would like to ask you, can you talk a little about how the Blue Red Movement is building a community?
Okay. I think to begin with, if to answer what is a community, and we believe that a community is a group of diverse individuals who share same values, if not same, then similar values, and who are walking towards a shared vision, if not a goal. And that is what we're also trying to do at BRM. We're a group of young individuals who are committed to walk a longer path of social change and if not have a shared vision yet, we're committed to collectively create that vision and then walk towards it. Does anybody else wants to answer that one?
Yeah, and I think also I that as a community, I think we're also constantly holding this question of what does it mean to be a community. So I think it's an ongoing discovery of newer insights on that.
Thank you. Would anyone go answer this? Is it okay? I understand the first entry into the movement is the become an engaged citizen. Like, how do you see the link is budding engaged citizenship and building a community as on the same lines?
Um, so surely being an engaged citizen is the first step. And from there to transitioning into becoming a community is another journey altogether, because an engaged citizen could be one person who's acting from a space of their limited understanding knowledge, but once they enter a community or they become a part of more than themselves, then there is a process of creating shared knowledge. There's a process of questioning, there's a process of dialogue, building understanding, and then from that space they can take informed decisions and actions that create social impact. So that is the journey. Maybe it's the first step to being an engaged citizen, but it may not be the same as a community.
So just to add on what Arnas said, uh, also like how the link is because during the fellowship and the community connect fellowship, each of the youth kind of performs a project or does a project, and that project involves working in their own local community, right? So that in a way gives a flavor of how engaging with the community looks like, what are the dynamics that come into play, what are the skills that you need to learn in order to work in a community, which then once they enter the movement is where they are able to, one is learn and apply what they have already learned and then keep on building upon on their skills.
It's basically essentially how I see it is it's a community of engaged citizens. Like since the entry point is active citizenship, like you said, everyone becomes an active citizen and then becomes a part of the community. So it's a community of engaged citizens.
Thanks. Would anyone give some insights more? Okay, fine. We'll go to the next question. What happens next? How does a challenge become a movement? How do you take care of the transition of new people into movement?
I feel Akash should take that one. He also is the co-lead of Community Connect Challenge and Fellowship.
Sure. Yeah, I can share. So the transition is, so there are multiple stages in the transition, and we try to make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible for the youth. As you mentioned, the first step is the challenge. It's a 2 week small challenge where they are engaged in a small and easy task, post which the fellows or the youth who are more interested and are more engaged in civic and community work, then they kind of do the 3 month long fellowship. It's like a detailed and a more deep dive into the fellowship of the challenge that they already have done. And once the fellowship is over, there is an invitation for all the youth, depending upon the criteria and other factors of entering into the movement, right? And once they enter the movement, and when once they enter the movement, uh, then there is a different set of steps or processes, whatever you would like to call, which includes, so for example, for the initial time, for the initial 6 to 8 months, they are more engaged into the activities of it. They are more engaged into the events that are happening. So just to give you an example, currently we are in the process of doing our next Fools Forum, an event which we have every 3 months. So a lot of these new people who have joined the movement recently are engaged in organizing that event, right? And along with it, maybe creating media, or also being mentors to the next batch of CCF and the CCC challenge, right? So that's how the transition is. And slowly and steadily, once they get a hang or an understanding of what movement is, and along this process, there are sessions on weekends wherein we talk about what are our values, what is our theory of change, why do we do what we do, so on and so forth. And then eventually, over the period of 6 to 8 months, is where they kind of get truly integrated into the movement. So that's like a process in a nutshell, which I tried to cover. But yeah, others also can add if I missed anything.
Akash covered the process very well. I think, in a way, if I have to summarize, it's like a funnel. So, like after every step, there is like something more that keeps getting added on and keeps getting filtered. And the deeper insight, I would say, there is that you really need try to tap into where the young person is and what is the intent or motivation for the young person. Like at the start, very beginning, the young person may not be very aware, but just wants to do something and is feeling bored. And we're like, okay, let's do something very quick, short, nice, fun. And then once they're excited and some of them are interested to do even further, then we kind of take a little more deeper and then deeper. So I think the insight is to really tap into where the young person is, what are their needs, and from there kind of invite them into the larger process of understanding a little bit, not so much that they feel overwhelmed and not so less that they're like, oh, I already know this. Just getting the right combination of something that is a little challenging and exciting, but not too challenging or not too boring.
Since you are a large group, can you talk about if there is organization of people into systems within the movement and how decisions are made within and between the system, like with the blue ribbon movement?
I can start and then maybe others can add. Um, so the way we organize ourselves is we call ourselves like a flower where the centerpiece is the internal norms, and there are different teams, and the internal norms teams is responsible to set norms that govern us, because we're saying that we are self-governing, right? So who's entering the movement and what is the time period going to look like? Even the 6 to 8 months where a new person is entering is decided and set by the internal norms team. So we actually brainstorm on how do we govern ourselves, and then there are other petals of the flower um, doing different things. One is say campaigns and events where we're saying the work that we do is also communities say connected. How do we get other people who are doing similar work or get them connected on one platform? So how do we reach out to the world is under campaigns and events. There's another where one is people's adversity, where we say that um, in the course of social change, you constantly need to learn. And how are we learning? Are we learning through books or through people? So here we're saying that we reclaim our learning, we design our own courses, we um, study in a way that we create informed social impact. So we reclaim our learning, and that's like one petal, one team, the other is media. So how do we make the movement visible to itself and to the external world? And yeah, I think partnerships is one of the other team where we're saying that we can't work in silos and we need to collaborate. We need to reach out to other people who share similar values. So this is like broadly how we organize ourselves, and the intent is to um, adhyayan is study, right? So adhyayan in a way that our actions are aligned to each other, like maybe what media is sensing informs campaigns and events, and so people's adversity informs what action should we take in the next few months. So the intent is to work in tandem with each other and kind of create um, an aligned action path.
And also to kind of add on that, I guess like whatever, so these are like the various verticals you would say that are working, and all of these are volunteer led, youth led specifically, right? So yeah, so that is one aspect I wanted to highlight, and the other one is also that the decision making. I mean, like the important aspect is how the decision making happens in BRM is through the process of Sarvanumati. And I would also like to invite maybe Tejal, Ashok, or Arvind to share on that and shed more light on it, because I think it would be interesting to hear different perspectives.
Um, yeah, sure. Sarvanumati, this is something I personally post about our own decision making process. That all the decisions that are being taken internally by us are governed with a system which includes everyone's voice. It is not that acha, someone is here since 8 years, someone is here since like 2 years, so 8 years ka voice is much more valuable. It is equal in that sense. If someone has any concern, they can raise it without any hesitation, and such a space is tried to be created. And hence it is something that I boast about, because a lot of times we do feel at a lot of spaces that our voice is not being heard, or uh, probably I wanted to say something and I myself was not able to. And here is a system which allows me to do exactly that. So yeah, Sarvanumati does give that democratic sense.
Yeah, and I think for us, the deeper question when we started this was that, if this is a movement of young people, then the decisions also have to be taken by young people. It can't be that the decisions are taken by somebody else and then young people are just implementers, or are like, just there for the sake of it, or just receivers of decisions. Or because I think the way we see young people in today's society is that generally they are invited on the table either for an agenda that they need to serve and adapt to, or that they're not yet thought of as capable individuals who can decide for themselves, and hence need to be always under like huge guidance. And no denying that we need to learn a lot as young people, we don't know everything, and there is definitely a role of elders, intergenerational dialogues to really understand. But I think leadership is not, I feel like, or something where I bumped into it was like leadership is not something that you'll get taught in classroom. Like it's when you exercise, and if it has to be youth leadership, then youth really need to be in the place to decide. And then when we were starting this off, we said that then the decision making also has to be by all young people. And that's when they will really learn what does it mean to share power, share resources, and that's how a community is co-held. Otherwise, it's like a few people running a community. How different is it from an organization then? So that was like a deeper reason of how do we frame it as a community also, as a movement also, which is owned by the people in itself, because there is nothing else at the center which will hold, right? There is no money, there is no other such tangible personal motivating factors which outside world uses. It's much more one individual's own motivation, their own learning, their own growth, their own purpose, their own interests. So that whole choice element really keeps it always alive and increases the ownership of the members.
I understand also that you have a different verticals and that is involved in building narratives alternate to the present ones. How important do you think questioning, like, which often shakes a status quo, plays a role in a community building?
I think this is a question that we've been dealing with since the past few months, and it's very difficult to actually have, maybe one voice that is, constantly dissenting, or one voice that is constantly questioning. But one of our elders, Mohan Hirabai Hiralal, he is from Minda Lekha, and also helping us with the Sarvanumati process. He had once shared that um, it is the dissenting voice that is your biggest teacher, and the voice of question, the voice of will shake you up and ask you to reconsider where you're going, right? So for example, in a group, if we're discussing something and there are like all unanimous voices, but there's just one person who's saying, no, I don't understand this, or this is what I object to, I don't agree with, will then actually halt the process. We'll have to listen into um, the person who's questioning, and really try and accommodate that perspective. We may not agree to them, but at least there's space for them to question. And I think once that happens, we're also saying that we're reaching the last person and we're not marginalizing anybody or anybody's voice in that sense. So I think that is one form of questioning. And the other form of questioning would be to actually question systems and structures that are there, maybe the education system, or the way we're organizing ourselves, or the way we're taking decisions, right? And we say कि movement में सारे जिद्दी लोग हैं. Nobody takes anything at face value. Everybody wants to question everything, and I feel that is what keeps the experimentation alive. It's something that keeps the um, like, how can we make this better and how can we make this work for everyone, that spark alive. So I feel that it's very important to keep that questioning alive, because we're not like settling for something that's already been given to us.
Yeah, and like just to add off like the question that you also asked about why is it important to challenge the status quo or the question the status quo, right? So like, and I feel like especially in the current times for millennials and for youth, since there is just so much of information, right? There is so much of information, there are so many gurus and like motivational speakers and whatnot, that you just get lost in it. Like you don't know what do you want, right? Like just to give an example, if you just watch a Netflix series, you will just get so motivated by that school of thought, and then you watch something on YouTube and so on and so forth. And that's where, which is where I feel like it's even more important right now, where you question like the things right from what you are consuming to the choices that you are making. And it can be as simple as, like, for example, if you're ordering something from Swiggy, so what is it like it's making you to order that, and like so on and so forth, and maybe get deeper into it. And personally, it also starts from yourself rather than questioning everything else, maybe starting from where or how things affect you and why are you reacting, behaving with these different actors or people or things in a particular way, and then kind of expanding your horizon and perspective, so on and so forth. So yeah, I feel it's even more important in these current times, and it will keep on getting important is what my sense is. Yeah.
I think also, as you know, as a community or as a collective where we are talking about Sarvanumati, the real intent there was also to say that leadership is not in one person, leadership is in the collective, and hence collective leadership. And if collective leadership needs to happen and all of us have to really decide together, it requires each person's consent, and that each person's consent will come in with many questions from their perspective. It's not like a unanimous answer the way Arnaz was sharing. It's much more deeper, that an inquiry that happens together, and it comes from the belief that collective has a deeper wisdom than any one person. And when we're asking questions, that's the way to really inquire into each other's worldviews, each other's way of looking, and from them there arrive at our collective truth and act from there. So Sarvanumati also as a way of decision making in the collective for us was to make sure or to ensure that we are on this inquiry in an ongoing way. And that's where I think questioning, consent, and collectively arriving is at the heart of the community.
Okay. Now that we have spoken about checking things up, can you talk about the conflict resolution process in Blue Ribbon Movement?
Who is taking that one up?
I think one person who has the most experience of resolu- like having done a lot of conflict resolution is Arvind. Since he's the guy who is called upon whenever there is a conflict. So, Arvind, if you can.
I mean, you guys make it sound like as if I'm the one who causes most of these conflicts. Full disclosure, I don't. Uh, um, I think speaking a little on the conflict resolution part, I think when you enter into that space, you have to keep in mind that you're interacting with people who all have their own opinions, who all have their own ideas about things need to be designed, how things need to come into fruition. You keep that in mind, and then if you're able to solve from that space, then it's a lot easier. So we've had multiple conflicts within BRM. A lot of them have been on direct issues, direct questions about some of these proposals. We normally, I think the easiest way to resolve a conflict is to get all parties confirmed and get them to speak and put forth each of their opinions and what is their dissenting voice or what is their concern with this particular point, and then you resolve for that from there. I think fortunately we've not had a conflict where we've punched each other in the face or nothing as severe as that. It's mostly been a ideological difference on how we go forward. I think ideological differences I feel are a little easier to solve because you just have to accept that everyone here has a different idea, has a different opinion on things, and then you operate from that space. So that then helps you solve for it. Beyond all of those things, I think an underlying fact is that people here trust each other, that they're not doing anything against you. I mean, it's not a very commercial space in that sense. Like I'm doing something which is going to benefit you as well. But if you feel that it is not going to benefit you, then please, by all means, do share your concerns. So that then helps keep conflicts in check, and then regular dialogue with people, regular reflections on a lot of other issues. So that helps bring all of these things to the forefront, and then you're able to solve for that. Uh, it's also important not to go from a confrontational space, but more from a space of genuine concern. I mean, do you really want to solve this problem? If you want to, then you go ahead. So that I think helps manage the conflicts.
Also, I mean, the other part to add on to this is that, like the Sarvanumati process that we follow, like the process allows for conflict resolution to happen in a non-violent way, right? So just to like give you an example of it or like the process. So if there is one is like if the conflicts happen on any proposals or any ideas that are pitched in or kind of shared with the group. So if there is a proposal that's shared, So it is asked to everyone who is part of the movement that if they have any concerns or objections, and once they share that these are the concerns or these are the conflicts that they have, then there is an adhyan or like a discussion that takes place. And like, which is where then what Arvind shared of making sure that every actor or the stakeholder is a part of it. And we keep engaging in it as long as either there is a bit like the engagement happens more to build understanding and collective understanding on the topic, right? And then later than that, then maybe out of that topic, it can either be that there is a different or a modified version of what the idea was, or else maybe like we realize that the concerns were valid and then there are change. So like whatever comes out from that discussion and that adhyan is the important aspect. And the conflict resolution or conflict discussions are also taken in that spirit. So that and it's like also like a medium or a way to self-reflect on yourself, see that what are the triggers or how do you deal with these conflicts, what it's evoking for you, so on and so forth. So there are like multiple layers to it, but I just wanted to share like how the process of Sarvanumati also allows it to do.
Also, like Arvind mentioned, it is important that we don't go in with a confrontational idea. Hence, we also do it with an internal terminology which we use, which is carefrontation. Like we are confronting, but with care. It is not to put you down or to like make you look bad, but we are talking to you. We are having a discussion with you because we care about what you say or do.
Uh, what have been your collective learning in the past 3 years during Sarvanmati?
There have been many. I mean, I can start with it and others can add. So like the top ones have been patience. Like that's like one thing wherein like even with the conflict resolution or even with the process taking its own time, like that builds patience, that builds like a capacity for you to be okay or to hold on to things which you are not okay with or not going by the way you would ideally like it to be. So yeah, it's been that like the process. And second is also it has like been a tremendous tool for self-inquiry or also for self-growth, because it was during this process that a lot of things about myself is what I realized, right? Like right from like how like talking loudly, if a person talks loudly, is something I cannot deal with. It triggers something inside me. So just like reflecting on that, or even like if there are certain conversations which are not intellectual, then it's like something that I don't engage in or I don't like to engage in that. So then like, so why is that happening? So like learning more about myself, so on and so forth, right? So that has been like various of, and the process has helped me to realize them. What I could say.
Could anyone give more insights on that? Or shall we move to the last question?
No, I think everyone should answer this one.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. Okay, please continue.
I feel along with patience, there's an understanding of initially it felt really slow. Like quite honestly, if I have to tell you, the process feels like slow like anything because you are debating or discussing the same thing over and over, and it just feels like okay, we are not reaching anywhere. But the highlight of the moment is when you reach where you want to reach. It's a solid thing. Its base is very solid, which cannot be moved or removed because you have had discussion, debates, dialogue, everything which involves talking over that topic. And hence, now that you are at that junction where everyone is agreeing, you know for sure that this thing is going to work without another doubt. So that has been a learning that With patience, it also brings in concreteness of the final result.
Yeah, I think also for me, the most interesting thing was that, I could think about what norms do I want myself. Like we were starting from first principle. There was nothing which was as given, and I just had to accept it because I had to accept it, which is what has happened like for longest part of my life in all the institutions and all the places I've been. But like just thinking from first principle suddenly made me realize, oh, maybe this is the reason why these rules are made in this manner, or why some people are enforcing rules so much, or why some people are so um go word by word at the rule, or like it just opened up a whole different way of looking at things in terms of why norms rules exist and why certain things are done in a certain manner. The other thing for me that happened with Sarvanumati is also seeing that it's not like I am disagreeing with you, but it's just like our worldviews are actually talking to each other. And then what we are trying to do is not really solve like my conflict with, say, for example, Ashok, but my worldview with Ashok's worldview, and generally more people like him and more people like me are trying to figure like a balance in between. And that was so revealing to just see that, oh, it's seriously not about you and me as much as it's about like larger things we are trying to figure out. And the whole spirit of doing it together and what it has taught us, like with anywhere now we know like till the time everybody is not agreeing, we're almost like, okay, has everybody agreed? Maybe somebody is not agreed. So that the whole idea of like taking care of everyone, making sure everyone is kind of held, has space, is included, that just becomes such an innate part of our being because of that.
I think my learning is more being from this micro lens. When you're looking at how decisions are being made, it helps you feel a little more sympathy towards the guys who are actually doing decisions on a macro level. It helps you figure out that maybe it's not an easy job to get everyone on board, and then it's a tough, long process. Plus, also, it goes on to show just how flawed our system of governing, our system of decision making is, where people with the most skin in the game don't get the opportunity to put forth their points. So, what happens when a group of 4 or 5 people decide on behalf of, say, a country of 1.5 or 1.3 billion people? So, what are the consequences of that? And then, how can you move from such a system to this kind of a system where at least you have more people speaking it, you have more people putting in their opinions, you have other dissenting voices also being heard. So I think that is what I would say has been my key learning.
I'll just add on one point which Arvind mentioned, and it got me also reminding that we always talk about the problem with people in power, but we never talk about the problem with people who put the others in power. Which is, we don't talk about the politics of citizens, the politics of masses, the politics of we as people who are giving power to some people, or who are electing people, or who are kind of, followers in a way. And the whole dynamic there is also really something to examine for all of us, rather than just always blaming the people in power.
Yeah, I think for me, the Sarvanamati journey has been a very spiritual one, because to me, it is the it is for me personally the most non-violent way to engage in decision making, because you're actually waiting for the last person to voice their opinions and voice their objections, so everybody is heard and nobody is marginalized or left out. And in a way it is also my journey to reclaim my own power, because Sarvanumati will only work if everybody owns their power and voices their own opinions, perspectives, concerns, and it's only then that will work. So it's not just reclaiming my power, but the other step is also to redistribute that power. So it's not my power over anybody else, but it is actually powered together to influence something, right? So it is for me been that journey. And interestingly, it's not just Sarvanumati outside, that I'm not just waiting to, listen to other people and we're aligning on one thing and going forward, but over time it has also built Sarvanumati, not built, but it is building Sarvanumati within myself and within, different parts of my psyche. Because, right now, jo millennial dimag hai, I think is like torn in multiple directions. There are multiple voices inside your head, and to actually come to, one's truth, one's authenticity, you also need to build some cohesion inside, like some kind of Sarvanumati within your psyche, and only then can you act from that space of authenticity. So for me, it has been a very spiritual journey. I think that's what I've learned, and I've also learned कि ये करने लायक काम है. There's a lot of commitment. It is slow, but it is something that is worth doing.
Finally, to close this conversation and summarizing the same question, I would ask, what makes a group of people a community and what nurtures a community?
Yes, like what makes a group of people a community? Like I think one of the foundation has to be like, hopefully has to be like shared values. There needs to be some intersection of values which are shared by those group of people, which then decide to like be in a community, right? So even at BRN, there are 6 values that we have that is kind of shared between us. So it's not that, okay, it can be very scattered and all over the place. So I feel like the foundation is uh, sharing of certain values and then building upon that and that acting like a foundation. So yeah, so that's what my understanding of it is, that how does a group of people.
I think just the willingness to be a community is the first and foremost. And I think the only thing that will hold through all the conflicts and ups and downs. Because beyond a point, if you're like, yeah, not happening, then it will not happen. Because conflicts are inevitable in any community, diverse, even like if we have similar intents and everything else, it's just gonna happen. And I think what just holds through those tough times is this whole intent of, even if I have to fight with these people, these are the people I would like to fight with and be with. I think that's what really makes it a community.
I think for me also it's the same. And I think along with shared values, I also see shared vision that is co-owned. Like it is hum sabka vision together, because then it's just a group that has come together towards a particular goal, and then without that goal, the group dissipates. So I think something that the group is committed to together towards a vision, and a vision that is, I think, beyond themselves, larger than themselves. And what nurtures for me is, I think, unconditional love and support for each other and each other's journeys, and the willingness to say, okay, I have your back, and we're going to work together no matter what it is. So I think for me, that has kept me feeling a part of the Blue Ribbon community, the family. And yeah, I think everybody in service of each other's highest potentials. I think that is what nurtures a community for me.
I feel it's the intent which is at the core of it. Like I'm choosing to be part of the community, and we are choosing to be a community. That is at the very center, epicenter, if I put it that way, because there is no tangible outcome that we might say, okay, I am getting this because of which I am here, but it's still a choice that we are making to be here. and that then stays with me that this has to be there, the choice, the intent.
Um, yeah, I think I'm not going to say something completely unique from what these people have already shared. A lot of similarities that way. Um, so I think I don't really find any particular definition that I follow when it comes to this. I mean, I have a group of friends, and we're also community in the sense that we all are from the same college, we are all from the same locality, and so on and so forth. So I think any group of people who are willingly put together, I would say, is a community, as far as I'm concerned.
I think I'd just like to add one thing because it's coming to me is like the essence of the community is also to constantly keep bringing things to the commons. Like you bring your knowledge to the commons, you bring your concerns to the commons, you bring your resources to the commons, your decision making to the commons. So you keep bringing stuff to the commons, and that's how it's going to be shared and co-owned. So I also feel that that will keep a community together and nurture. Like you constantly keep bringing things to your collective space.
Thanking each one of you for giving us a time and expertise with us. Wishing you all the very best in the future endeavors.
Thank you so much for this
Thank you so
opportunity.
much, Tanushree. Really happy
Thank
to be
you.
here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanvishri. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.